Our first speaker just moved to Wilmington earlier this year. Diane Durance became the director of UNCW Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship in June. Diane brought with her a wealth of experience in not only running similar entrepreneurial organizations in Michigan, but she has also owned and operated several businesses herself. In her limited time here, Diane has already made great strides in helping pull together the numerous assets our region has for small growing businesses, as well as raising our sights for what entrepreneurship can become in our region. Please join me in welcoming Diane to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here to talk to you about startup communities, in part because I'm very excited about what we have going on with our startups here in Wilmington. The term startup community was popularized by Brad Feld, who was very instrumental in bringing forward Boulder, Colorado as a hub of entrepreneurial activity and startups. So before we get into talking about the community of startups, I want to define what a startup is, because there's a lot of confusion around entrepreneurship and small business and startups. And for this purpose, what I want to do is be sure you understand what we're talking about when we talk about a startup community. So startups tend to be scrappy young ventures. Very few startups are 10 years old. Most are 5 years old or younger. And what they're doing is they are solving problems that don't have obvious solutions, and they're working on innovations that may not be successful. They also tend to have the promise of tremendous growth, so there's an excitement around the business when it's a startup. The other thing is that startups are companies that are unconstrained by geography, and I want to take a closer look at that. Companies that are designed to scale very quickly and are unconstrained by geography. So when you look at some of these companies that you see the logos here, and I'm sure many of these are familiar to you, you're looking at companies that can continue to grow because they are providing services and products to businesses outside of our community. Now, an example of a local sector business might be something like your local dry cleaners. It's very constrained by how many people need dry cleaning in that area, in that neighborhood. So why is it important to look at startups that have this kind of demographic? Well, it's because they are part of our traded sector economy. And those jobs are what brings in the revenue from other parts of the world and bring it here to Wilmington, where jobs are created here, and those jobs are the jobs that have a multiplier effect. So if you look at, not all startups are high tech, many of them are, and that's what we typically think about as the high tech startups, but it's really, they're not all high tech, but the high tech jobs have a multiplier of 4.3. So that means as we bring in business into our community by doing these services for companies around the country and around the world, the people that are hired by these startup companies in these jobs then create the need for more doctors and lawyers and dry cleaners and retail and restaurants and so forth, which creates opportunity for all of us, whether we're local business or we're in the traded sector. Also, startups tend to create jobs that are higher wage jobs, 47% higher. And they're more resilient in economic downturn because they're not just dependent on what is happening here in our community. So the other thing is that they tend to be those STEM jobs, and jobs in technology and engineering and math and so forth in the sciences are outpacing job creation 27-1. So these are important jobs for us to be cultivating and creating in our community. Here's a typical map of what we see with where are the startup hubs. Where is this exciting startup activity happening? And for many years now, for more than a generation, we've seen startups clustering on the East Coast and West Coast. We have our own Raleigh, North Carolina, makes the list almost every time, which is really exciting. But how do they become a startup center? How does a community develop into a place where innovation and entrepreneurship happens? Well, Brad Feld in his book had 4 attributes that he came to realize after participating in Boulder. So the first is that entrepreneurs must lead, and that leaders in the community must take a long-term view. The community needs to be inclusive of everyone that wants to participate, and there need to be continual activities that bring people together, sharing ideas, connecting, building relationships, and so forth. So Brad had the advantage of being able to reverse engineer what happened in Boulder, because he could look back and say, how did we make this happen? We're in the early stages of creating a startup community here in Wilmington, so I'm going to add 2 other things that I think we need to continue to do, that we are doing, but we can build on. And one is to play to our strengths. We have area expertise. We have strong industries here. We're strong in ed tech, in contract research, and marine science, marine biotech, and those are things we need to continue to build on. The other thing is we need to push our message out. We need to let people know what we're doing here and what our strengths are, so that we attract more talent and more thought leaders in those fields to Wilmington. So how are we doing? I think we're doing very well. I'm very excited to be here and to find out so much is happening, and I can't take much credit for it because, as Rob said, I've only been here 5 months, and there are things happening. We have entrepreneurs that are truly taking the lead in our community, and they are getting out there. They're visible to our entrepreneurs. They're mentoring. They understand the traded sector economy. They have those kinds of relationships. They're helping our startups make those connections. So that's very exciting. We have many organizations, and not everyone is listed on my slide. It was getting pretty jam-packed. But we have a community that understands it's going to take time. It takes a generation or longer to build up a startup community. That's because you need time for startups to get going, to get traction, to be successful, to create jobs, to have exits for those founders, to get back out there, start another company, for young people to participate in some of the growth companies and get ideas of their own and go out and start their own businesses. So that takes iterations and time, and when you have to weather the economic up and down that happens over the course of 20, 30 years to grow it. And I want to also acknowledge that on this slide, although I've represented some of the organizations that are working hard and a few of the individuals, I want to also say we have such a great service provider and professional services community. We have banks, and we have attorneys, and we have CPAs and consultants that are taking the long-term view, and they're investing and volunteering their time to work with our startups. We need to engage the entire ecosystem. Another thing that we are really coming on strong with is connecting the dots and really bringing people together. We just had in November Cucaloris Connect, fabulous opportunity for hundreds of people to connect at dozens of different events during that week. We have many other of the activities that Brad Feld talks about with competitions. He pointed to the need for tangible and focused activities, and some of those we've been doing more and more of, things like startup weekends and hackathons and business accelerators and meetups. So those things are happening as well. And we are getting the word out, but we need to do more of that, and we need to be sure that people understand what we're doing, what our strengths are, what the opportunities are here, and and really build on those things. And I'd be remiss if I didn't do my 30-second commercial on the university. Almost every startup hub has a university that has impact on what is going on in the startup community. And universities bring 5 resources to the table. We have the students, and the students bring the energy and the new ideas and the long-term view. They want to do things here, they want to stay here, they want to grow businesses here. We have professors that are starting businesses. We have professors that are mentoring and helping student teams. We have research labs and libraries and other facilities. We have entrepreneurship programs. We have our technology transfer office, which is OIC at UNCW. So we're playing our role as well. So Wilmington is growing, a great startup community. We're in the early stages, but we have all the essential elements that we're pulling together. And I want to mention two other things really quickly. One is that your entrepreneurial service provider organizations have come together, and we are producing a comprehensive calendar, a monthly calendar of all the entrepreneurial activities and opportunities that are happening, and the Business Journal is supporting us in doing that so that we can get more word out, we can engage more people, and it will be more visible to you what is happening and what the opportunities are to engage. The other thing we're doing, which you'll hear more about in January, is we are working through our Innovate SENC grant committee to pull together opportunities for our entrepreneurs to connect nationally and globally in the fields where we have strengths. So when I'm asked, do we have a startup community? Yes, we do, and it is growing and it is fabulous, and you are all welcome to participate in it. Thank you.
Our next speaker has likely done more in the past year to change Wilmington's landscape than anyone else in town. If you just look outside the windows of this building, you can see his work. The Port City Marina is a 10-acre, 84-slip marina that recently hosted the first ever Wilmington Boat Show. Just beyond the marina is Pier 33, which is a significant new event venue in our region that can host concerts, weddings, and other events. And next to the pier, 2 restaurants, Blackfin and Vita, are under construction and will open soon. If you haven't noticed, there's a renaissance happening downtown, and much of it is on the northern riverfront property that Chuck Schoniger is developing. Also, in his spare time this year, Chuck oversaw the opening of the first cold storage facility at the Port of Wilmington. Today, Chuck will talk with us about the new urbanism. Please join me in welcoming Chuck to the stage.
Rob, thanks a lot. I was joking earlier, it'd be nice if we had teleprompters here and make it a little more presidential. So, well, I'm here to talk about new urbanism, which is a movement which promotes environmental friendly aspects of urban areas, downtown type areas. It was a term coined by architects, planners, development people and policymakers. The movement is really being adopted by most cities in the U.S. But for us, I think the easiest way to understand what new urbanism is doing for us is really to take a look at our historic downtown and our history and to understand where we're going. I feel like the best way to explain that is first showing where we came from. So, we pulled out some old pictures. This is Front Street 100 years ago. So you could see the hustle and bustle that we had down here and the excitement, the activity. There was a lot of live, work, fun aspects of our downtown area, full of character. And this is just another day in Wilmington through that era. But I thought this was an interesting slide. We pulled this out. This is the Chamber of Commerce, and it shows even 100 years ago they were marketing to new people coming by and new parties, which always happen here. So, but and then we've got a very impressive downtown. You know, the Sandy talked a little earlier. This was just an incredible city and our state capital at one point, with the Cape Fear River really being the thoroughfare to the world, you know, which opened us up. So 100 years ago, this is kind of where we were. downtowns, after World War II came, the new idea of suburbanism started burgeoning. And suburbanism is an antithesis to urbanism. It's where we decided that we develop our outskirts. Cars were rolling off assembly lines, and gas was cheap, and people preferred four walls and a backyard and to raise your families. So that was what I call the conception of Walmart and the conception of McDonald's. So this is everybody enjoying their suburban area. And I'm not trying to judge at all, but with suburbanism and manufacturing everything, we became very, very good at postage stamp neighborhoods and continuing to build more and more sprawl. So again, it had a place in our growth of our society, but we just kept on building them and building them and building them. So, and then became the new McMansion for everybody with backdoor pools and more house. So, and I'm not judging, but now we got the dreaded cul-de-sac. So, and I was responsible for a few cul-de-sacs in my day, so I'm here to apologize now. So, when we look at that, we understand the new principles of urbanism. Some of that is walkability. We've now come back to, that bubble has gone out, now it's coming back in, and somewhat of an infill type concept. We're now starting to embrace our downtowns. In the 80s, it started up again as people understood, hey, we want to come back to our community. We want to know our neighbor. We want to have shared experiences. So the walkability was important. Connectivity is another principle of new urbanism. Connectivity, I want to be able to go to my grocery store and my pharmacy and go to my office and have the ability to do all that without having to get in my car if at all possible. Our downtown, is starting to what we call district up. So we've got what we call our upper downtown or our downtown area. Then you got the historic downtown, and I'll go through this pretty quick. Then we've got our office complexes that really are in the heart. When you have your live, work, fun is what I call it, rather than live, work, play. You have to have all the different characteristics within your downtown area. So we see a big market for the office sector to really increase downtown. So, this is just more kind of districting, just somewhat like New York City, where you've got the Soho district and meatpacking and Little Italy and Chinatown. Wilmington's starting to get that type of feel with the districts. Another aspect of urbanism is still keeping your traditional buildings within your downtown area, not getting rid of everything, embracing your history. So quality of life is also real important. Today it's we have choices. We have choices where to live, where to spend our time. The quicker you could get to your fun time, the higher your quality of life. So it's a somewhat of a scale to me. That if I could get from my work to my house and start enjoying my day from then on out, and I have more of that, that's what we see people embracing more and more. So then the other characteristics of new urbanism is live, work, fun. Can I live, work, and have fun all in the same place? So I'm going to start talking about downtown and the different aspects of the live part of it. Tommy Davis built City Block Apartments. That was our first real apartment complex here in downtown, and he's done a great job. the demand was off the hook. I think he had 3 or 4 units left a few months ago to vacate. Bannerman Station, put together by Todd DeConis, was our first condo project that happened downtown, and that's a true mixed-use building that we got. We're all excited about Farming on Front Street that's coming. It's our first really local grocery store, that we're gonna have in a long, long time here. The Cotton Exchange, that was revolutionary to bring retail, the old and the new together, and I always get excited when I get to walk through there. If I missed, then we have East West Partners doing the new River Place coming soon. We're all excited about those condos coming here. And then Pier 33 is a development that we sold to Todd Sadenven Pool. They're doing apartments and condos and retail in front of our marina downtown. So work. We needed some pioneers and some visionaries like Dr. Eshelman who decided that he wanted to assemble all the employees and bring them back downtown. That was risky, took a lot of guts, but what it all brought to us was really, the start of, what I really see as the downtown really burgeoning. So, BB&T building, done by Charlie Maddox, BB&T, and Brian Eccles, obviously. BB&T is moving in there, but that's one of our newest buildings downtown. We're excited to see that there. Union Station, I put that in as one of our new buildings. Bank of America was a little earlier. So then we go to some fun aspects of, I'm not real good at this. Fun aspects. So I put our marina and our restaurants as part of, as a fun aspect. Rob was talking, we had the boat show down here. We had 15,000 people come in from all over the place to attend the first annual boat show last September. They sold out for next year before they even finished this boat show. They think they're gonna double the size of what they got here next year. We're proud to open up 2 really fantastic restaurants on the riverfront. They'll open first quarter next year. We got Blackfin on the left and Vita on the right. Blackfin, this will be the 17th Blackfin throughout the U.S. Great restaurant. The design is top notch. Vita is a Mexican food restaurant. And part of the concept here was we wanted to, we spend a lot of money and a lot of time convincing patrons to come to our restaurants and enjoy it. We wanted to have a diversity of ideas and things for all people here. So menu is diverse with 2 different types of food classes, and then we have the ability to host events or do other things that we have out here. We have a river walk. We have our river walk will be completed upon the completion of these restaurants. So, and that's a Herculean effort that was taken on. This is finally we'll have a bridge-to-bridge river walk, as we call it. So. Other fun stuff that you get downtown are parades that we have down here. We have our River Fest. We have the new Performing Arts Center that if you haven't been inside is just one of the most incredible buildings we've seen, come to our town. And then we're all very excited for the referendum that just passed on the parks. City is going to spend about $20 million redoing the riverfront park that they bought from us a few years ago and making it just world class. I was in Orlando a year or 2 ago, and we met somebody when we told them we were from Wilmington. They just raved on all the development that was happening downtown, and I had a little chuckle on my face and understanding that we had something to do with it. That was really fun for us. So. But some other aspects of downtown that we see, what does the future hold for us? Well, when you go through the different types of commercial buildings, just hospitality alone. Hospitality, if none of you have seen this, we are going to double, triple the amount of hotel rooms that we're going to have downtown in the next 6 to 12 months. So, and then I could see that number in the next 5 years even doubling one more time again. So we'll have about 800 beds downtown for people to sleep in, tourists coming in, family and friends coming to visit, any events that we have down here. So that's a pretty incredible number. Office space in the last 10 years downtown has also tripled. And we see office space as really the next 10 years, we think there's going to be a huge run in office. When we look as commercial developers and you look at a occupancy and vacancy rate, there's very low vacancy when you include all the office space downtown. And with all the other stuff happening downtown, we're convinced that it's going to attract a lot of office users and developers to build some office downtown. Apartments and housing. We just have 400 new units that just landed, and on the horizon we got 600 new units in development. So, and that's just what we know is happening. After people see the numbers of how at the prices the developers getting for some of those units, we see that maybe even doubling from the number that we have on here. The parks, the city has done a great job in really making sure that we have nice parks here and we're developing them and along with the river walk and all the fun aspects. We're just real excited, and it makes me reflect from the first slide I showed here. In 100 years, what will people be looking at? What will we be seeing? What will still be here from what we've done? Will we be colonizing Mars and talking about new urbanism in Mars, or will we be seeing all the buildings that are coming out of the ground now as still big buildings that we have and places where people live, work, and have fun? We're real proud to have some piece of the strata of the development of Wilmington, and that's it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Tim Markley, the Superintendent of New Hanover County Schools. Tim last spoke at a power breakfast in 2011, soon after he became the superintendent here, and we promoted his appearance by saying he had the most important job in the region. When Tim spoke, he wisely corrected us by saying the teachers have the most important job in our region. Tim was in the news again this summer after a confidential memo he wrote to the school board members about student assignment and achievement was published in the media. Today, Tim is going to talk to us about some of those issues on the essential question in education. Please join me in welcoming Tim to the stage.
Good morning, folks. As always, it's a pleasure to come talk to folks about what we do in schools every day. When teachers walk into a classroom, they teach a lesson, and every lesson has an important element that they want that child to learn. And we call that the essential question. And when I talk about schools to people, I often get questions. And I think a lot of folks think the essential question is, do we have a good school system? And I would tell you that's not the essential question, because you do have a good school system. When you look at the data is really clear about that. This is how we stack up against our neighbors on state tests at middle and high school. Folks, you have the top performing school district in the region. When you look at how we compare at high school, ACT, which is a national test that many of you took to go to college, again, tops in the region. When we look at large districts, those are those mega districts like Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, you see that we're right up there with those large districts. When you look at the high school level, again, we are right up there at the top. When you look at districts that are about the same size as us, that 25,000, 35,000 district, you see again at the middle and high school level, we're right there at the top. And you see at the high school level, we are right there at the top. So I would tell you the essential question is not, do you have a good school district? Because you do. And I want to start this with a quote. I'm an avid reader, and one of my favorite authors is a guy named Michael Conley. And he's got a character named Harry Bosch. Harry's the detective. And every time he goes to a case and has to deal with his bosses, he tells them, either everybody counts or nobody counts. And that's the message I want to talk about today. Because the question is, we got a great school system, but do we have the resolve as a district to make sure that everybody counts? You see the development that's going on around us. We had two great speakers talk about what the growing community, but we've got to include everybody in that. And so what's the challenge? The challenge for me is overcoming poverty. There are folks in our district who struggle with this every day. And why is this important to me? Because when I was a kid, I had two parents who were high school dropouts. And there were times when I was on that free and reduced lunch roll at school. And education was the one thing that made a difference in my life. Great teachers, strong parents, good friends who were going to college, and role models. Poverty has a disproportionate effect on some of our children. It's associated with delayed developments, lower literacy rates, high rates of behavioral and emotional disorders, as well as students in poverty tend to be a higher percentage of our special ed students. It also affects cognitive development, short attention spans, lower participation, learning disabilities, developmental delays because of poor nutrition. Those are just some of the effects of poverty. It contributes to behavior disorders, chronic stress disorder, no safe haven or stress outlets. We're going to go home in another week and a half and send 27,000 students home for almost 2 weeks. And for about 90% of those students, that's going to be a fun time. There's presents under the tree and it's Christmas. But for a percentage of our students, that is one of the most stressful weeks of the year they will have, because there'll be no presents under the tree. Their parents won't be there. They'll be on their own for that week, and they're wondering where their breakfast is coming from and their lunch is coming from, because when they're in school, we're providing that. There's exposure to violence in neighborhoods. There's greater impulsivity, acting out before gaining permission. And folks in poverty oftentimes have cognitive issues with short-term memory and learning. It's factored by a number of things: parental education, family structures, neighborhood characteristics. Many families in poverty don't have time to have conversations. They are worried about where their next meal is coming from. They're worried about getting to a job where the boss won't give them time off to go to school. And our students don't learn some of those appropriate social skills when they come to us. There's a lack of parental involvement. Parents don't get involved. And it's not because they don't want to get involved. It's because they don't know how to get involved, they can't get time from work to get involved, or oftentimes when they are in school, their interaction with a teacher was not a positive one, and they don't want to go back to school and relive that experience. They don't contact schools about academics. I've had parents say, look, I get them here in the morning, you take care of them until they come back home in the afternoon. They don't attend parent-teacher conferences because they can't get there. Or again, they go back to their own experiences in schools. And children in poverty are more likely to lack and need a caring, dependable adult in their life. In schools, oftentimes, the only adults that they see that are caring and supportive. A common problem with poor students: high tardy and absentee rates. Attendance problems often are indicative of negative parent attitudes. And again, it goes back to those parents' experiences when they were in school. Parents may actually discourage participation. Some of them will do that because they're afraid that they can't get their child to an event, and they'll be embarrassed about that. So what do? One thing we can do is talk about universal pre-K. Helping those students before they get to school in kindergarten. Our county manager is here somewhere, and this is one of the initiatives the county has talked about, is expanding the opportunity for pre-K for our students. Finding ways to get those students help before they even get to school. We took over Head Start 2 years ago because we wanted to increase and expand our opportunities around quality child care. Because every childhood program, we think, is a bridge between that gap and that home. Smart Start is doing work with students when they come out of the hospital to put books in their hands with those parents and start to bridge that gap. So those are some of the things we can do before they even walk into one of our schools. Break up high concentrations of poverty. If I'm in a class of 25 students, which is a large class, and I've got 2 students who are struggling, they're going to get a lot of attention because they're the only 2 students who are struggling in that class. But if I've got a reduced class size, which I have at a lot of schools, of about 15, and 11 or 12 of those students are struggling out of that class size, the ability for them to get the attention they need and the help they need to catch up becomes that much more difficult. When we look at neighborhoods and we look at our school lines, we need to look at ways to tweak those lines to break up some of that poverty. Now, that's not a 1970s style busing kids from the beach to downtown. I know where I live and I know the realities of where I live. But I think we can still honor neighborhood schools and make adjustments to the line that help break up some of those concentrations of poverty. We can also look at housing patterns. What are we doing to encourage low-income housing in other areas instead of concentrating in one area? See, it's not just a school issue, it's a community issue. If we want to live in a community like we've seen the vision for the first two folks, and those you'll hear later, we need to care about every person in our district. We need to focus resources. It's not about simply giving me more money. You give it to me, I'll find great ways to spend it, but it's about using it in the right places. The shotgun doesn't work. So we need to focus where our resources are going. It's not about creating more charters. I've got a charter school now that on day 20, I'll get 20 or more students back from that charter school. And why is that? Because on day 20, the state certifies their attendance and gives them their money for the year. So the students that were struggling, they hold for those 20 days, and then they'll send them back to us. Because public education turns nobody away. We've got to put resources where it will do the most good. We've got organizations like the Blue Ribbon Commission, that folks in this room are part of, that are willing to work and help out downtown. We've got businesses in this community that I think can do a great job in helping us. This is not a Wilmington problem. If you go to Charlotte, Durham, Wake, poverty is an issue for every one of those districts. But in a place like Charlotte, they got a program called Project Lift, where communities stepped up and gave millions of dollars to help out in some of those schools downtown. I've got business leaders in this room. I would love to talk to you about partnerships like that. We're going to build a new CTE high school, which will provide jobs and opportunities for kids who may not have had them in the past. They're going to need internships. They're going to need mentoring. I would ask you, the business community, to step up and work with us on that. The final one is parents. We've got to reach parents who have been turned off by school, who struggle with school, and reach out to them and let them reconnect with us in the schools. We did a morning breakfast or morning coffee at Creekwood this year. And we do a number of those kind of outreaches, but it was actually my best attended event. Those parents want to connect with schools, but they don't know how. And we've got to be willing to get out of our safe areas, our schools, and into those communities and have those conversations about what's going on and find ways to do that. It's a lot of information to cover in 10 minutes, and Rob's about giving me the signal here. But I'll close by simply saying, I grew up with parents who struggled to put food on the table. Education changed and made a difference. And there are folks in this room who have that same story and probably a harder story. So I'd ask that you work with us, the school system, to do what's right for our students. Because if we want the communities we've seen shown today, then we need to make sure that every student in our system counts. Thank you.
I don't know how many people in this room have gotten what I call the look from Beth Quinn. It's hard to describe how much Beth is able to communicate with one glance. It's happened to me a few times when I've run into Beth at an event. She catches my eye when I'm walking up to her, and with one look she communicates that if there's going to be any hint of pity or sorrow, then I should just head in another direction. Beth is only about positivity and moving forward. A senior vice president with First Citizens Bank, Beth has been involved with numerous nonprofits and other community efforts in our region. She was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer in 2013. Beth responded in typical Beth fashion by creating She Rocks along with Mary Bartow and Tracy Brown. She Rocks raises money for ovarian cancer research and provides support to people affected by all cancers. It has quickly grown into one of the more significant fundraising organizations in our region. Beth will talk with us today about making a difference. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Good morning. I would say pour yourself another good cup of coffee and sit back and I'll share a story with you, except we don't have any coffee pots on the table. She Rocks was formed over a good cup of coffee. I was diagnosed December 23rd of 2013. And upon that delivery, that message to my life, when I pulled out of Zimmer Cancer Center and I make a little U-turn to go back home, at the time I was living in Pine Valley, tears were just streaming down my face. And I just audibly prayed. And I said, God, I don't want this. There's no cancer in my family, but I have it. And because I do, I know there will be other people that will follow behind me. And if you walk with me through this chapter of my life, I promise I will help people that will follow my footsteps. Later that week, I met with Mary Bartow over at Port City, Java, and truly, over a cup of coffee, She Rocks was formed for the simple fact that we're put on this earth to do good and to help others. And that's exactly what She Rocks is all about. The name came about because of research, ovarian cancer, knowledge, and support. And Wilmington is notorious for helping each other and others. We're such a giving community, and I'm so proud to be part of it. My philanthropic actually did start at First Citizens. When I was a peak time teller and I was still working for a staffing agency, at that time, it was shared with me through various people that the bank likes for you to engage and to do extra activities. And one of the very first activities that I participated in as a teller was a walk for the March of Dimes held at Greenfield Lake. And that actually started me on my journey of giving back. At this particular time when She Rocks was formed, Mary and I sat at the table and we said, we have to do this. Now, me just being diagnosed, Mary having existing cancer, where does this all come about? And at that time, Tracy Brown was undergoing ovarian cancer chemo herself. And so through all of this and all of you, this is where She Rocks began. Our first luncheon was in September of 2014. At that particular time, I was not on Facebook, slowly joined afterwards. But that was our only way to communicate that we were going to do a luncheon. And at that luncheon, just through some emails and through a little bit of media, we sold out. And we raised funds that year in 2014. We had a luncheon in 2015, and then we just finished up this year in 2016. And since then, a little over 2 years, She Rocks, through the giving of all of you, we have raised close to $550,000. Our mission is to fund research and to give back here locally, and we've done just that at Zimmer. We fund UNC at Lineberger in Chapel Hill. Mary and myself and some of our board members, we go up every year at least once, if not twice a year, to inspect what we expect from them. We fund research that is just for ovarian cancer. When I was diagnosed, I knew absolutely nothing about ovarian cancer. I had never heard of it. I had been being tested for 7 months nonstop. Almost every 6 weeks I was going to some type of doctor. And when I woke up from my simple surgery of having my gallbladder removed, it was on December 23rd. Your doctor does not stay with you while you wake up. And when I woke up, Dr. Tinsley was in my room, and I asked him, I said, what are you still doing here? Because it was near Christmas. And if you know Dr. Tinsley, he's got a very dry wit about him. And he looked over and he said, well, I just want to make sure, everything was good, you woke up. And I said, and what? He had already shared with my husband my diagnosis. And I said, okay, so what do we do next? And he said, well, knowing you, you like to be large and in charge. And I do. He said, but you have to ride shotgun. And I said, I can do that. And so now we fast forward of learning about ovarian cancer, that they're just symptoms, but there's not a tool to diagnose it. And I will tell you, standing here at the end of 2016, we started a journal, Mary and myself did, and we put people's names in there that we prayed for, that we knew that had cancer for whatever it is. Not just ovarian, but many of them were ovarian cancer, and they became sisters to us. Since that time, I counted up last week, there are 11 local that had passed away from this disease. And so that's why we have to fund cancer research. But on top of that, locally, the reason a portion, 25%, that we keep here locally is because cancer treatment is expensive. And it's hard. It's hard on a person that you see in infusion chairs that just look very, very hopeless. And we wanted to give hope because cancer is not an end-all. And as Rob said, don't look at me and feel sorry for me because I am happy. I am grateful. This time last year, I wanted to come to the breakfast. I wanted to hear my pastor speak and some of my other friends, and I couldn't because I was sick. And so when Rob called this year to ask me to speak, my first inclination was to say, no, you don't want me to speak. And then it was God that just shared, and he said, yes, for such a time as this, you do share your story. Because it's not about me, it's about all of us, because you give, you attend, and it's not just our function, but there's so many others here in Wilmington that we come together as just a community as none other, and we give of our time and our talents and our resources. But I'll tell you the difference that we've made at New Hanover and Zimmer. We've bought new infusion chairs. We provide wigs for those that can't purchase those. We give $1,000 a month in gas cards. And then this year we've committed into the new Zimmer Cancer to buy 35 brand new infusion chairs for those that sit and take chemo, that you're comfortable and they have heaters in there and they are able to massage you. I am telling you today that I believe with all my heart that somewhere someone will find a cure for cancer. I believe that. One of my favorite verses is Hebrews 11:1 that says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I can't see my cancer. But I do believe there is one smart person out there that's going to make a difference, and not just for ovarian cancer, but for all cancers. The one thing that's so unique about She-Rocks is that every dollar that comes in, we give out. We have funded, since our first luncheon, we have funded $315,000 to research. And then the rest of it we have given here locally to Zimmer, and I am telling you, that's pretty impressive for just a few short women coming together, blasting the social media, you all filling the table and writing your checks. I am grateful. I'm so grateful. And I'm so honored that I have great friends and family and children, and that I surround myself with people that are smarter than me. That's my success in my life, is that I surround myself with people that are brilliant and that are kind and caring. When asking to speak on making a difference, and I Googled the definition of that, it simply is that you make an impact. And I challenge you this morning that you make an impact in someone else's life other than yours. And I say this and I truly believe it. We're put here on this earth to do good and to make a difference. And then when it's over, it's over. But until then, I am going to fight like a queen warrior. That's the only thing that I know. I know how to be scrappy, and I know how to fight, and I know to do the right thing. And I'm so appreciative that we have the opportunity to tell our story. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and let us all go out and fight cancer like nobody's business and find a cure. Thank you.
Jack Bardo became the CEO of New Hanover Regional Medical Center in 2004, and he is retiring at the end of this year. The medical center's achievements during his 12-year period here are too numerous to list now, but they include the opening of the Betty H. Cameron Women's and Children's Hospital, the NHRMC Surgical Pavilion, a renovated patient tower, a physician network with more than 230 providers, a system-wide conversion to electronic medical records, and the current renovation of both the emergency department and the Zimmer Cancer Center. Today, Jack is going to share how changing a culture made it possible to not only complete all of these projects while nearly doubling the medical center staff to more than 6,500 employees, but to simultaneously increase patient satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and profit margins. Now, I do want you to know that these accomplishments did not come without a price to Jack. It is often noted how much presidents age in office. You can see here how President Bush looked when he came to office and when he left office. And you can see how President Obama looked when he took office, what he looks like today. So at the Business Journal, we dug into our archives and we managed to find a headshot from Jack on the exact day that he became CEO of the medical center. Now please, before we advance to this next slide, please keep in mind that presidents only serve 8 years and Jack has served 12 years. So if we could please see... Actually 13. 13, okay. So if we could please see the before and after of Jack. So the most concerning thing to me about this slide is how much that before photo looks like the incoming CEO, John Gizdick. So I just want to make sure John knows, if we're all together here in 12 or 13 years and you look like that after photo, we warned you. So please join me in welcoming Jack.
Thanks, Rob.
Good morning, that was good. I got to be the dumbest person in Wilmington because that's the 4th time I've had to follow Beth Quinn in speaking, so I'm not real smart. Keynote speaker, huh, big time? I never got that up. I was never the keynote speaker. You're a lot smarter than you look, Rob, because I thought, all of a sudden, you're already buttering up the new CEO. And just for the record, I already hear John is committed from now on that since, we're going to be the new parking sponsor. Since parking's so important for us at the hospital, we're going to sponsor your parking here. That was actually really good, just for the record. So.
We started, when I got there 13 years ago, I started just literally 13 years ago next month. And when I got there, I was walking around and I was part of the organization, and it was a really good hospital. But I didn't like the culture. I didn't like the feel. And we've heard it from a couple of people already today. We tended to look at the patients through our own eyes, what we did through our own eyes, and how it impacted us. We weren't looking at it as though we were from our patient's perspective and understanding what the decisions we made, how we behaved, how we reacted affected them. And we don't come to work for us every day. We come to work because people put their faith and trust in us as an organization to hopefully cure them, but even when we can't, to heal them. And that's an important thing. You have to start looking at things differently, and we knew we had to start to change something. And we started there that our patients were our singular focus. It's expanded out now to make it a better place for us to work, our patients and families to get care, because families are so important, and for our doctors to practice. But it was that first must-have, looking at things on our patients first. So we started saying we need some must-haves. We need a new Hanover way. We need those tight things. You see it at Disney World. It doesn't matter what day you go. The experience is the same. There's a Disney way. We needed to put some discipline into a new Hanover way for us. So we started with some must-haves. AIDED, I'll talk about that in a minute. Hourly rounding, rounding on our staffs, whiteboards in the rooms, walking people to their destination, not pointing to them, saying hello and greeting people in the hallways. But the first thing we asked people to do was AIDED. AIDED, acknowledge. Good morning, how are you? I'm Jack. I'm here to be your nurse today. I will be with you for about 20 minutes. This is what I'm going to do today while I'm in the room with you. And it's great to work with you today. Trying to get 4,000 people to do that on every encounter sounds simple, but it's really very hard. But we had to put a discipline, we had to watch, we had to monitor, we had to change behaviors. And when we walked out, first day we went out, we're out rounding, and one of the nurses who's still there actually, she looked at me and says, I'm not going to be able to do my job if I have to do this AIDED thing. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm not going to have time. So I said, really? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, let me help you. Let me coach you on this a little bit. Do you wash your hands when you go into the patient's room? Absolutely. It's a safety issue. I said, okay, walk in, look at the patient and say, remember, I'm Jack. I'm going to be your nurse while I wash your hands. While I'm washing my hands, I want to tell you what I'm going to do with you. I'm in here today, and thanks. And she goes, oh, okay. So I saw her a couple days later. I said, how are you doing with that? She goes, oh, it's easy. This thing's easy. She had to be coached just to figure out, to change the behavior. Today, it's how we do business. It's how we've grown. People are leaving our organization telling folks how friendly we are, and we're growing business. Over the 13 years, we've grown dramatically. We've moved 10% market share in our secondary market. 94% of the people who live in New Hanover County, who go to a hospital in the state of North Carolina, come to New Hanover Regional Medical Center. So when people tell you they're leaving us to go elsewhere, we don't do 3% of the work because it's out of it, and then there's 3% people leave on. I'm spending time on the secondary market, and that's where people are coming to Wilmington and spending money. That was huge for us. The second thing that was huge for us was realizing that we had to hire the right people to come in there. We have 35,000 applications a year for 700 jobs at New Hanover Regional Medical Center. They come from around the country. But we have people who have shortages. We have job shortages in nursing, different technologies, and it used to be back in 03, 04 in some of your business. If you had the technical degree, we would look over some of those behavioral flaws that you had, the nastiness figure. We had to stop that instantaneously. So we changed how we hired people. There's none of you that, if you're interviewing anybody today, you can read their resume, and after you've read it, throw it away. And start asking behavioral-based interviews. Ask scenarios. This is a problem that happened to us last week. How would you behave in that type of a situation? I don't want you. You don't meet our culture. And then once that manager hits that point where they want to hire somebody, we then expose them to 4 peers, 5 peers, who go through the interview phases with them and use behavioral-based interviewing. They'll walk down the hall with them. They'll say, how would you react to this? And they, at the end of it, go in and say to the manager, hire them or don't hire them. I had managers say, "You're taking away my hiring authority." No, I'm not. You've decided who you want to hire, but these folks are telling you if it's a cultural fit. And if it's not, they're saving your butts. Be happy with it. Don't hire them. The secondary benefit of that is on the first day of work, anybody walked into a new job, it's scary. You have 5 people who know you from the floor who own your hire because they interviewed and said to hire you. That's helped reduce turnover dramatically over the years. That's an important thing we do. Then we have to develop leaders. If your businesses are anything like healthcare, you promote from within. Anybody do that? So you take the best technical person, the best nurse, the best ever, who are at the highest competency level of their jobs, and the next day you put them where they're the most incompetent people in the job room because they don't know how to be managers. They've never been taught. They've never been led. You know, it used to be back when I got into the business, my mother would look at me and say, you know, people, they're born leaders. Nobody's a born leader. You have to learn how to be a leader. I was a CEO of a hospital at 30 years old. I was the most incompetent human being that I knew. I was unconsciously incompetent. I didn't have a clue, but boy, could I fake it, okay? And I got through it with my winning personality. You got those things working. But when you got through it and you looked at it, you got to behave. So we've now had 40 leadership development institutes, 2 full-day sessions where we teach people and talk about the behaviors that we want to change within our organization. We've committed 40 of those. There's over 310 to 20 people who come to those sessions. And we've trained leaders on how to be better. We've started a leadership development institute where we take 12 to 15 of our youngest executives, you know, people up and comers, and we put them through a year-long program. We've had 3 cohorts where we've put physician leaders through programs who can support us. If you're not going to invest in leadership development and you keep getting the same results with your managers, there's a reason for that. We started team building amongst ourselves. You see us with all these beautiful pumpkins there, or watermelons there. And the reason for those watermelons there is the executive team, we work out every Wednesday together at 12 o'clock. We go through some very intense workouts. We support each other, but on the flip side, it's a great team building session. And what we've developed out of that, we've seen each other at our worst, but we've developed an enormous trust that's carried in the workforce, and the staff sees that. Don't underestimate trust. We've changed our management styles. We don't tell people what to do. We coach them in doing what we need to have happen to get the culture correct in the organization. We're coaches. Okay, when we go through these things, we're not trying to change who people are. We're trying to coach them to do the types of things, and you work through that. You don't manage. Sometimes you have to, but you got to know the difference on where you push and you pull on that. Here you see a picture of Pete Whitley, who's the manager of our med-surg unit, our 2nd floor. They get a lot of young nurses right out of school because it's a med-surg unit, it's more basic, and tend to go in. But we do this in every department in our hospital every day, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, where we go to these boards and we look at what our day is going to be like. We talk about the challenges we have for the day. We talk about barriers for success. We talk about who's got, you know, tough things going on with their patient load, who needs somebody to reach down to X-ray to get this test done earlier than what it was. And they look at the day, and then they ask the staff, are you red, green, or yellow? Green, I got a good patient flow today. Things are going well. We're doing good. Yellow means I'm okay, but I can't help anybody else. Green means I could help. And red means I'm struggling. I got some bad mixes. I got some sick patients today. Can somebody give me some support? We don't hear anymore that we're understaffed at the hospital. We don't hear the same things. You know why? Because we've allowed the people who are doing the work to tell us how their days are, and we've provided the help that goes with that. That's coaching, that's trust, that's dialogue that comes out of it. That's a change. It's taken me many, many years to be successful at that. You got to apply your standards consistently. You see these 2 ladies here. They're both named Brandy. They job share in our neonatal intensive care unit. We have 45 babies pretty much every day in our neonatal intensive care unit, ranging from 26 weeks to full term, but many of those full-term babies are our opiate-addicted babies and a variety of other things, and it's a sickness that you've never seen. This is a big unit. Well, they're involved with a cohort called the Vermont-Oxford Network, which is about 300 hospitals. But the one group, and these are the big names of hospitals in the country, and John and I and others have gone up there to support them. But they got in a cohort with 14 other hospitals. You would know the names of every one of those. We are probably nationally the least prestigious. And to eliminate central line infections in the neonatal intensive care unit. We went 956 days without a central line infection. The next one to us, one hospital got over 200 days, nobody else got over 100. So something we were doing was different. We were very proud of it. John always tells this story that, you know, we filled up a kindergarten class, Tim, and on the flip side, we've saved the hospital $3.5 million by not having to do rework and things along that nature. We're very, very proud of it. So we're walking out. I told this story at one of my employee forums. I walked out and the two Brandys meet me in the hallway and their heads are down and they looked at me and said, we can no longer use that example because we had a central line infection yesterday. How do I react to this? I looked at him and said, stop. You should be very proud of what you've done compared to everybody else. I want you to go home tonight. I want you to buy a bottle of wine, go sit on the back porch, think about all the good you've done with this, drink the wine, come back tomorrow because you've got 150 staff members that you're going to have to work with and find out how this happened, fix it, not who did it. They've told this story in the hospital, at LDIs, Hawaii, Europe. It's been around the country. The trust factor that's evolved from that amongst the organization is absolutely huge because they know we have the back. It's not about who did it. It's about how do we keep it from happening again and how do we change it. And then people are more willing to bring mistakes up, talk about them, and do types of things along that. Layoffs are not on the table at New Hanover Regional Medical Center. They are not a management technique. They are a management failure. If you can't anticipate your turnover and manage layoffs through attrition based on your business cycle, you're not paying attention. It's a simple, easy thing to do in laying people off, but you don't understand the impact it has on people's lives. And on the flip side, you don't understand how it destroys the culture of the organization. You can take 5 steps back forward financially, but you're taking 50 steps back from a cultural perspective. And how do you ask people to look at use lean processes to eliminate efficiency if they're worrying about their jobs? You can't. Don't put that in your process. We then went through at one point and we identified every employee in our hospital as a high, middle, and low performer. If you were high, we had to sit down with every employee. If you're a high performer, it's you are phenomenal. What can I do to help you? The answer is, I'm great. If I need anything, I'll call you. Thanks. And you hug and you leave. The second one is with the middle performers who could go either way. This is what I want you to do. You're great. We love you. We don't want you to leave. Come on up. Then the low performers. These are the ones, Tim talked about it with the students, the two that were struggling. Now in a job setting, they're not struggling because they don't know how to do the job. They're struggling because they don't want to do what everybody else is doing. They most of the time have worked with you for 20, 30 years. They suck the life out of your organization, but they bullied you and you don't deal with them. You lose credibility with every other employee in the staff, and you let this toxic culture walk through with you the entire time. That dialogue was different. It was one way. We weren't blaming somebody else for my failures. We're talking about what you're going to do, which is the same as everybody else is doing to maintain your job. That shook the organization because we did them last, and they're normally first. About 70% of those people flipped and came back to become high performers because they were smart. 30% left. Nobody was fired. If you tell somebody all you have to do to keep your job is A, B, C, and D, and everybody else is doing it, and they choose to only do A, and B, you don't fire them. They're choosing to leave. This is an adult world we're living in. And you go through that. So you don't really do that. What happens at the end? It's an environment that doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the workplace. It's the creation of everybody. I tell people all the time, there's absolutely nothing I can do as the CEO of this organization to make you happy in your job. You decide if you're going to be happy in your job. You don't see them. My job as a leader, John's job as a leader, your job as leaders, managers, is to make it easier for them to do their job, to remove the barriers, to remove the we, they, so that they can excel because they're smarter at it than I am, and they know how to do their work. We create the environment, we create the culture, and when you create the culture, you make a difference. Couple of things. When I got there in 2003, the employee satisfaction was at the 22nd percentile. Actually, with the thing we just did this summer, we're up at the 79th percentile. 2-year turnover margin. When I got here, we're now watching, when I got here, the overall turnover rate in the hospital total was 25%. It's down to 11. But now we're starting to watch, we're narrowing it down to the first 2 years, making sure, because we've done stuff for how you orient, how you bring people on, how you do it. And we've taken that from 28% to 14%, and actually it's down to about 13% right now. That's huge when you look at the overall turnover rate. And we didn't put our patient satisfaction up, but when we started, we were in the single digits. We just ended last year on the question, would you recommend? Every business once recommending. Word of mouth is where you get it. We're now in the 93rd percentile in the country, top decile. Financially, when I got here, we were a 1.84% margin. We're now up to 6.08. That's top decile in the country performance, and for a community hospital or a county public hospital, we're probably number 1 in the country or number 2 in the country on that. We've moved from 4,000 employees to 6,600 employees. Imagine if we walked in and looked at the mayor or the head of the county commissioner, Mr. Barfield is here today, Mr. Zappel's here, said, we're going to bring you 2,600 jobs. It's guaranteed if we don't get it done. And there's Beth Dawson was on the board. If we didn't do that out of the process, imagine if we did that. We'll write a check to you guys. You'd open up the thing. 2,600 jobs. Thank God we got our parking lot approved the other night. That's all I got to say. Thank you all very much.
If we could please have another round of applause for all of the speakers. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We hope you have a great holiday season, and we'll see you next year.